All right, so today we're looking at percent of change. So percent of change can mean a few different things. It's kind of like a name that encompasses a few things. So the two main things are percent decrease or percent increase, right? So the way that I think about this, we can think of some examples here. So let's say let's say you're at the grocery store, right? And you're walking around, and let's say you go over to the area where there's the cookie dough, and you see one of those like cookie dough tube things, right? Where the cookie dough's in that like tube. And you're looking at it, and on the package it says now 10% more, right? Or maybe it says like now 10% bigger. What that means is that the amount of cookie dough has been increased by 10% compared to what it used to be. Same price, but it's a percent increase. So there's like more of something you're getting. That would be a percent of change. Another percent of change could be a percent decrease. So let's say you are at the store. Let's say you're at like a clothing store, for example, and you're looking at a pair of jeans, and the sign for the jeans says they are 25% off. That would be a percent decrease because the cost of the jeans is 25% lower now because they're on sale. So we have percent increases and percent decreases all around us. This is like one of the most useful things you can learn, just like outside, like for life, right? When you're like shopping and buying things, learn understanding percent of change, how much things are on sale, or how much more you're getting of something, or how much like something is changing is really important to know. So let's check out how we do this. There's two steps. The first step is we have to set up this percent of change fraction. So we say that percent of change equals the amount of increase or decrease, like how much it went up or down by. So like if you're thinking of the jeans, it's like how many dollars did it go down by, right? Or if you're thinking of like the cookie dough, it'd be how many more like ounces of cookie dough are there. So basically, to figure that out, you want to take the two amounts, right? So like if it's the jeans, it's like the price before the sale and the price after the sale, and you're going to subtract them to figure out the difference. So that's why I say subtract here. You're always going to subtract to figure out that top amount. And we'll do some examples here, and it'll make sense as we do some. The bottom part of the fraction, down in the denominator, that'll be whatever the original amount is of what you're looking at. So if it's the jeans, it's the original cost. If it's the cookie dough, it's the original amount of ounces in the cookie dough tube. Okay? The second thing is you need to solve that fraction, right? So basically, you'll take the top and divide it by the bottom. You'll get a decimal, and you want to take that answer and make it a percent. And that'll be your percent increase or a percent decrease. So let's practice some. And in this video, we're going to go through a bunch of problems. And you might not need to see like every type of problem, or you can, it's up to you, but you can skip around and check out different types of problems I'm going to do here because there are a few different types that we're going to be looking at. Okay, so this one, it says last week you saw 8 squirrels in your backyard. This week you saw 13. To the nearest tenth, what is the percent of change from last week to this week? So there's some things that are important to pick out here. I would say last week we saw 8 squirrels. That's important. That's what we saw originally. That's what was last week. This week we saw 13. Right? So we're trying to find that percent of change. So we need to use this red equation here. Percent of change equals the amount of increase or decrease over the original. So instead of writing the whole percent of change words out, I'm just going to say P equals. So we're going to use P to represent the percent here. And I have a fraction. Usually I do the bottom of the fraction first, if I can, right? If they tell me the original amount, it's easy just to pop it down in the bottom. So if we look here, last week, seeing 8 squirrels, those 8 squirrels that were hanging out in our yard, that's the original amount of squirrels we saw first. The original amount is whatever you did first or you saw first or the original price. That's what we mean. So 8 will be on the bottom. On the top, you need to find out how much did it change, right? We went from 8 to 13. To find how much that increased, right, because that's an increase of 8 going up to 13, to find the increase, we take the bigger number minus the smaller number. You don't want to do 8 minus 13 because you don't want a negative number in here. You just take the bigger number minus the smaller number. And if we do that, we can see that there was an increase of 5 squirrels in the backyard compared to last week. So we get this fraction here. We get 5/8. But we're looking for a percent. That's why we have p there. So we need to take this fraction. We got to make it a decimal first. So in the calculator, you can just take the top and divide it by the bottom. You could say 5 divided by 8, and you'll get p equals 0.625. Right? So we're close to being done. We have a decimal, but now we need to make that a percent. So the easiest way to do that usually is just move that decimal place 2 spaces. Put it right there between the 2 and the 5. We're going to say that the percent of change equals 62.5%, and this was an increase, right? Because we went from 8 squirrels to 13 squirrels. That's an increase. You always want to say if something is a percent increase or a percent decrease. So that's a 62.5% increase in the number of squirrels over last week. Let's look at another one here. Okay, so sometimes you'll have questions like this. This one says from 2010 to 2020, the population of Japan decreased by 1.3%. So population decreased by 1.3%. The population was approximately 128,057,000 in 2010. They want to know how many people live in Japan in 2020. First thing, this word here, approximately, if you ever see that on the PSSA, for example, approximately means about. It's like there are about this many people, right? We don't know exactly, but they're just having an estimate. Okay, so it's an approximation or an estimation or like the best guess. So when you have questions like this where you know this would be your original amount, right? Because if we're comparing 2 years, like 2010 and 2020, 2010 would be the original amount we're looking at because that came first. 2020 would be the new amount. Okay? So we know the original amount, that's this 128 million, and we know the percent of change. When you have problems like this and they ask you for the new amount, they're saying how many people lived in Japan in 2020, that's the new amount they're asking for. There's kind of like a shortcut here. You could take the original amount, so I'm going to say write that 128,057,000, and you can multiply it by the percent of change, 1.3%. When we do this, it's going to tell us how much 1.3% is of the original amount. So let's just type this in here. So I got 128,057,000. Right, it's a big number we got to type in, times 1.3% key, that's below the delete, enter, right? This gives me 1,664,741. What we figured out, this number right here, this 1.6 million, that is, let's go up here, that is the amount of decrease. We actually figured out the top of that fraction. Okay, so since they said it decreased, we just figured out how much it decreased by. So since they're saying that original amount, that 128 million decreased, and we know it decreased by this much, we could say, take the 128,057,000 and subtract from it that 1.6 million amount, right? Because that's the amount of people that their population declined by. So let's do this and let's figure out how many people they have in 2020. So I'm saying enter in this line here in your calculator. Let the calculator do the heavy lifting for you. So I get this number right here, 126,392,259, and our label here is going to be people. Okay, this answer right here is not a percent, right? We're just finding the new amount, like how many people live there now in 2020. So they started in 2010 with this many people, 128 million, and then they decreased by this percent, and now they have this many people, 126 million. Okay, let's go down to this one. All right, this one they're saying is, first of all, is it an increase or a decrease? Then we have to find the percent of change. Well, if the original amount, what we start with is 300, and the new amount is 262.5, we're going down, right? So we could say this is a decrease. We're decreasing from 300 down to 262.5. Now we got to find percent of change. That's just that original fraction we were working with up above, right, at the first question. We can say percent of change equals, there's my blank fraction, right? The original amount always goes on the bottom, and then on the top I need to find the difference between the two. So I'm going to say subtract them to find the difference. So that's how you should have this one set up. 300 minus 262.5 over 300. Right? Then we could take and figure out what the top's going to be. So the top, if you subtract those two things, you're going to get 37.5. It's still over 300. Now we just kind of do the same steps we did up above. We take that 37.5, divide by 300, and I'm going to get P equals 0.125. We have a decimal, so we need to make it a percent, right? Because we're solving for a percent. Whenever you see that P, you got to take a decimal and make it a percent. So that becomes P equals 12.5%. And this one, we said it's a decrease, right? So this is a 12.5% decrease. All right, let's go down here. I think this is the second to last. Yes, second to last one. Okay, so we have this one here. They tell us the amount of decrease is $12. They say the discount is 25%. What this means is that the $12 off is 25% of the original price. They're like the same thing. They're just saying $12 is a 25% discount. So since we know the percent, right, we can fill that in over on the left side, 25%. We're trying to figure out these things here, the original cost and the new cost. We're going to try to solve for this original cost first, then that'll let us figure out the new cost. So this 25% goes on the left. Put your fraction there. On the bottom, original cost, I don't know, so I'm putting an X. I don't know what that is, but we'll figure it out in a second here. This $12 is going to go up on the top because it says amount of decrease, right? And in our thing up here, in our fraction, we said this is amount of decrease, right? It could be the amount of increase or the amount of decrease. Well, they're telling us right here, the amount of decrease is $12. So that goes up above. Now we have an equation to solve, right? We got to get this x by itself. So whenever you have your variable trapped in this fraction here, that's not good. We want to get rid of the fraction. 12 is being divided by x. I want to do the opposite and just multiply by x. So I'm going to write parentheses to show I'm multiplying by x. Basically, you can take that top and multiply by whatever's in the bottom to get rid of your fraction. That's a good thing to do. So these x's cancel, right? And on that right side, all you have left is that 12 that's up there. On the left side, if you have x times 25%, we can just rewrite that like this. 25% times x, or you can even say just 25% x, same thing, right? Okay, so let's keep solving this, right? Draw my line. I'm going to divide both sides by 25%. Remember, when you solve an equation, your ultimate goal is to get the variable alone. right now the variable is being multiplied by 25%. So since it's being multiplied, I can divide to get them canceled out. So that's what I want to do. So divide by 25%. 25% are canceling, and now I've reached my goal. I got x by itself. And all I have to do is over here figure out what this is. And that's pretty easy to type in the calculator. You just got to remember this percent, right? You got to do 12 divided by 25% key. If you just do 12 divided by 25, your answer is going to be have the wrong decimal place. Okay, so we get x equals 48. Now, here we do not need to make this a percent because remember what we're solving for. We're solving for x. X was the original cost. That's why we put it down in the bottom. So you only make it a percent when you're solving for p. Here we're solving for x. It's just a number, right? So that x, we said, is the original cost. So we could say original cost is 48, right? $48. Okay, so I'm going to put my answer over here too. I'm going to say original $48. I also need to find the new amount, right? Because it said, what's the new cost? Okay, so here's what we got to think about. If the original cost is $48 and the amount of decrease was $12, how do you find the new amount? Well, you can just take the original and then subtract the decrease, right? Let's subtract that $12. So this is saying that it's originally $48, but you get $12 off. So if you do 48 minus 12, you're going to figure out that the new cost is $36. And that makes sense because $12 is 25% of the total cost of the original cost, right? So that kind of checks out and that makes sense. This is how I want you to write your answer, right? The original and the new, right? You can also put them up there. That's fine too. But you just got to say somewhere what they are. Okay, I think I have one more slide here. Okay, last one. So this is like those, an example with those new amount questions where they tell you, they say find the new amount. They tell you the original. So like in this problem, the original would be the 100 points, and they tell you the percent of change. Okay, so all you have to do here is these two steps up here. So first thing, take the original amount, multiply by the percent, right? So let's do that for this one. 100 points is the original, multiply by the percent, right? It's being decreased by 34%. Okay, so we got to multiply and figure out what that is. Well, 100 times 34% is going to give you 34. Okay, the second step says if it's an increase, you're going to add it on to the original. If it's a decrease, you're going to subtract it away. So in this problem, we have a decrease. So we take the original, which is 100 points, and we subtract what we got up here above in this first line. So we got 34. That's how much the points were decreasing by. They were decreasing by 34 points. So if I do 100 minus 34, I'm going to get 66, and my label is points. That's the new amount. Okay. Now you might want to try the second one on your own, so if you want to pause it, give it a try, but I'm going to do this one here now. So we have $200 increased by 100%. So same setup. We're going to take the original amount, 200, multiply it by the percent, right? If I take anything times 100%, it's going to be the same thing, right? So 200 times 100% is 200. So the second step is I need to see if it's an increase or a decrease. Well, here they say it's an increase. So I want to take my original $200 and I want to add, because it's an increase, add this $200 to it. And that's going to equal $400, with the dollar sign is my label, right? And that kind of makes sense. If anything is increased by 100%, that basically means you're doubling it. So you're taking $200, doubling it to become $400.